Perfect. So we are recording, and we're here today at Mothers Illuminated talking to Lisa Wallace out in the UK, and you own Intuitive Weaning. So give us a little bit of insight as to what your business is and how you got there.
Okay. My business is literally helping and supporting mums of all different dynamics and cultures all over the world, internationally, with their weaning journey and being supported to give them the confidence to follow their path, which could be right or wrong, dependent on their next door neighbor or so and so down the road. The way I got here was basically that over the last 20 odd years, I've worked with families. I'm qualified in childcare anyway, an early years specialist in the UK. So therefore, I've worked with a variety of different families and dynamics over those years, different ages and different abilities, different allergy types, you name it, I've probably done it. And having 4 children myself. So the thing that made me so much focused on the weaning journey is because motherhood's tough. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. There's challenges thrown at you left, right, and center. You have to navigate your own feelings, find your own identities, all of these different things. So the one thing I like doing is I like being creative and I like making a mess. So the
Perfect
two of
for
those,
motherhood.
exactly. The two of those go really nicely with weaning anyway. And it's the one part where, other than the anxiety that everybody has around choking and things like that, it's the one thing you should be able to relax and just enjoy and have all those funny moments that you can bring out when they're 18 and stick around and embarrass the hell out of the child, you know? It's that kind of thing. That's what I want to make. I want to make those memories for you rather than having to hold off and feel so anxiety fueled by every mouthful or not that they're taking and dreading those meal times. And I want you to have these meal times at the end where you're sitting there laughing and joking with each other rather than trying to barter with your toddler or your 5-year-old to eat another piece of broccoli because they can't have an ice cream, but then will they eat the ice cream because it's the wrong flavor in the wrong pot, you know?
Yes. Oh, I know. Yeah, I love that. And so how did you end up getting there? I mean, that's a pretty specific business, right? So I suspect there must have been some serious power struggles in your household that said, I need to help this. I need to help other moms get through this because holy moly, this is a lot.
There wasn't actually. My kids all eat brilliantly. I can't fault them.
Really?
But it was something that I was made aware of, that so many children were having so many issues with, and so many parents were having so many issues with. I mean, in the UK, we have children starting school and not eating meals at school because their mums aren't feeding it to them or their mums aren't giving them a certain thing, which is quite a huge demographic nowadays. And that's quite scary for me to think like that.
Yeah.
And also, people don't realize that the weaning stage also helps to link with speech and language, also helps with your motor skills and your fine manipulative skills, all of the coordination. It's a big part of development, to be fair. But at the same time, I have as well, I was aware more of the sensory aspect because my 2 middle teenagers, they're both on the autism spectrum. So they have very different sensory needs. And one of them, I remember, he used to eat with his fingers a lot of the time, food. And I'd be like trying to explain to him like why, understand him. And he said to me once, and I'll never forget it, he turned around and said to me that when he was using his fingers to pick up pasta, I think at this point, he was picking up pasta, and he said because he can feel everything, he can feel the bumps, he can feel the texture of the sauce, he can feel the edges of everything, and it's so sensory seeking, but it's also the sensory integration that goes into it. So I looked more into that side, and that sort of, I'm a big one for like neuroscience and all that kind of thing. So goes, I suppose, with child development. But with regards to that, so I looked into that a bit more and I found more things out. And the more I was finding, the more I could find like jigsaw pieces to fit it in a different way, to flip it on top of its head, how we're supposed to be doing it. If that makes sense. So I'm a big believer in finding, like I said to you earlier, finding the way that's right for you. So to me, I let my children do as they wanted in the sense of food. I was no way ever going to confess that I'm an amazing cook or loved cooking or stay in the kitchen, because that is just not me. Throw something together, hope it works, done. But with regards to that is the fact that I wanted to not have the fixation on food in a negative way for my kids. So therefore I wouldn't push a point with them. So if they didn't want to eat something, I would always try it and then leave it if you don't like it, because I'm not going to sit there and force you to eat something you actually genuinely don't like. But what I did before that was I also took children to lots of mess play groups, lots of activity groups through nannying and all the other childcare avenues I did. And things were coming back like clothes being stained and marked and everything else. I'm soaking them in stain removers to get rid of them. And I was thinking, these are supposed to be products that are taste safe and completely free of all these nasty things for the children. And I'm thinking, if it can do that to clothes, what could it do to your insides? So it got me thinking. So then I created the first ever completely edible messy play sessions for mums and babies. So we literally had like flat trays on the floor and a big tarpaulin. They were stripped down to their nappies, clean nappies, might I add. And they would sit on these trays, and I would have hummus, and I'd have wraps, and I'd have cake crumbs, and we'd have cornets, ice cream cones, and we'd have all different sorts of things. Like I made edible beach, edible gardens, herbs, a lot. So they could experience different textures, smells, sounds, all of that in one go. And then I found more going from that, how many parents were coming to me with all these other issues that they had, where they hadn't started weaning, where they were going to start weaning, where they didn't know where to start, and they were feeling all these pressures from everywhere else. And another time I had, which made me feel really, really vulnerable, I think, was when I went to a baby massage class. My youngest, who's now 9, I went to a baby massage class to do something that was fun and, you know, meet more mums and all that kind of thing. I hadn't really had a chance to do it with my others because I've been working all the time. So I did this, and in our children's centres in the UK, which are government vet sort of centres, then we went to one of these, and I went to this massage class, and this lady who was teaching it ended up directing all her attention onto me and this other lady that were talking about weaning, because she felt that it was completely irresponsible for us to start weaning yet. Our children were far too young. It was the wrong thing to do. We weren't doing it right. She was very opinionated, let's put it that way. So what they do in these children's centres in the UK, which I am a big believer again in interactive learning. Who wants to sit there and look at a PowerPoint presentation and just see slides go past? It doesn't do anything. And that's a big thing, that how it's presented over here. So she made me feel really, really uncomfortable, to the point I felt like I'm not a confrontational person, and I'd already declined the offer to her support. Pleasantly tried to change the subject a few times, tried to guide her back into what I was actually there for, and she just kept coming to the conversation of weaning, and it got to the point where I basically gave her my resume in words and told her to leave me alone. But I felt, you know, as a mum of 4 at that point, and all the years I had behind me, and I felt vulnerable. How's the first time mum, or even a second time mum, going to be? That's not fair. So it made me even more passionate about what I enjoy doing, basically. And I'm all about exploration and enjoying everything like that with food. So bits of my mothering journey, yes, got thrown together in it, but it wasn't like I had a big battle with food for weaning my child at the process.
I was going to say, how do you balance the, you know, allowing your children to experiment with food and grow with food on their own, with still teaching them how to, you know, obviously you said your child was on the spectrum and was eating a lot with their hands. So I have 4 children. My oldest is 6, so they're very young. And my 6-year-old, my 3-year-old's great. Like, she'll use a fork and spoon and she can do great. My 6-year-old, for some reason, feels like she has to touch all of her food. And it drives me nuts, because I'm like, you're 6, like, you're too old for this. And I'll try to show her how to use the fork, how, she knows how to, but she just prefers the hands. And it drives me nuts because I'm like, you're old enough where you should be eating properly and not be making a big mess. And then, and she gets it all over her hands and she scratches herself. So it ends up all over her face. And, so, and I'm sure I cannot be the only parent who has a child that's eating with their hands. So
No,
how would
exactly.
you address something like that? Because yes, you want to like obviously allow them to grow with their food and not have negative associations, but at the same time, that they do have to learn how to eat, in a more civilized way, I guess.
I understand what you're saying. It depends. I
Mhm.
am still a big believer in children do things at the right time for them.
Mm,
And that can take a little bit longer. It can take a little bit less. It can take a little bit more. It depends on the child.
yeah.
With regards to eating with their fingers and things like that, like with my son, he did that until he was say eight going on 9. But he
Okay.
did. We made a rule. He could do that at home, but if we were
Mm,
outside at home, then he had to sort of stick by society rules.
yeah.
Because if you look at different cultures, they eat with their hands in different cultures. So it's
Yeah.
only strictly speaking society's way of thinking that we have to do it with our knife and fork. We have to,
Yeah.
in China, for example, if you have a knife on the table, oh no, if you have a fork on the table, it's considered rude. So
Mm,
in our culture, well, in my culture anyway, you have knife, fork, and spoon. So
yeah.
therefore it's very different. So I try and think about it in that sort of side of it, in
Hmm.
the fact that yes, you can do it here, but outside the house, then other people are going to have that expectation on you.
Mm,
And then it just sort of, he grew out of it because he wanted to then do it at home because he was doing so much outside the house. He
yeah.
didn't need that bit anymore. So it was just something he grew out of. So there's lots of people that would sit here and tell you, oh, you should give them a reward, or you should just tell them not to do it, or you should be model it. But if you're already modeling it and there doesn't
Mhm.
seem to be any let up or give from the child in question with regards to it, then you're just
Mhm.
going to get into that battle of having that, you dreading the fact that she's not going to, that they're not going to listen, and then
Yeah.
stress about that, and then getting in a mess, and then everything else for age appropriate things, and then how it's going to appear outside the house for other
Mhm.
people,
Yeah.
and those sort of links to it, which is understandable.
Mm.
However, if you do react too negatively to it, and as an instance, and consider it consistently do that, then
Mhm.
you'll just become at war with each other.
Yeah.
That makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. We had a similar thing with potty training. That's what it makes me think of. It's the whole adage of like nobody uses a diaper forever, so it's just like when they're ready, they'll go on the potty. You don't really have to
Yeah,
actually potty train a child. They just go when they're ready. And yeah, so I assume it's probably the same type of thing. It's just like I like the whole in the house, whatever, but outside the house, because that's the biggest thing. It's like we need to make sure that we're still following societal norms when we leave the house, because that is considered rude to eat with your hands in our culture, you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's generally where it comes as a divide, because most people will let it go in the house because
Mhm.
what's the difference? But when you go out the house, because there's those expectations, one is you being the parents, your child behaving like this or that, with
Mhm.
whatever it is, and also the fact of how your child then gets perceived, how you then get perceived, how the whole family gets perceived, and it's all that negative energy in a lot of ways, and negativity
Mhm.
around it because it's different, it's unusual. So yeah, that's why I kept it separate, in the sense that I kept that bit so that there was no sort of
Mhm.
negative coming back on him, like there was no embarrassing side to it because he was doing the norm, and then mine was at home, you're free.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And then I like the what you were kind of touching on, which was going out and navigating being a mom around all the professionals in the mom space and all of their different variations of opinions and expertise, right? Everyone's got expertise, but they're all contradicting each other. And I love that because so we're, I guess, more of an alternative space as well. Like I did extended breastfeeding with my kids. My third, though, I ended up drying up when she was about 4 months old. So she's been on a bottle. Um, and now I have my fourth and I'm breastfeeding again and everything. But yeah, I agree. It's like everybody has an opinion on, everything. And I remember when my fourth was, we were drying up and she had a cow's milk allergy. The amount of pressure that there was to like just go out and get a bunch of dairy-free donor breast milk, and it's interesting because like as moms, it's easy to sit there and say, well, obviously that's the quote unquote next best thing. But how practical is that? It's like what works for each person and each individual and each family is going to be totally different, and that's where the practicality of like there's the objective best and then the subjective best, right? It's like we can sit there and look at all the data and say this is the best case in like ideal situation, but who lives in ideal fantasies? Nobody does, right? It's like we just have to figure out, yeah. So we just have to figure out what's best for our specific situation and go with it. And so I love what you were saying about having to navigate that even as a seasoned mom, and imagine having to do that as a new mom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's finding like motherhood is a journey, weaning is a journey. It's not a race, as people try and see like the aesthetics pleasing that they think is great on social media or baby mum. Oh, the amount of baby mum groups that I've seen on Facebook and other places where they just bash each other because of the fact they're doing something different or they're exploring another avenue or they want to do this. It's look, we're all mums. We're all trying to find our way in the world, our way of raising our child, and we're doing what we think is best. And there shouldn't be that stipulation on it has to follow suit with everybody else. It's like I had a group of mums that once came to one of my edible messy play sessions, and they go to an acquired taste of mums group, shall we say, in the UK. And they all believe that because they belong to this mums group, to fit in, they need to have the same changing bag, the same pushchair, just different variations of, you see. And it was very apparent when they decided at the end of my messy play session that they all tried to feed their babies pretty much the same stuff at the same time, sitting next to each other with the same changing bags, just in different colors. It was just a moment of realization for me, like they have got to be some sort of, I don't know, I'm going to go with insecure, but I kind of think some sort of crazy on another level, because it's it was sad for me to see, because the children weren't even interested. They didn't want what the mum was trying to do, but the mum was trying to keep up with the other person. And it shouldn't be like that. It should be like everybody supports everybody. The same as in business. Mums should all support each other in business. Like I would support even other people that are in the weaning world. I would support them just because I believe doing it differently. I'm not doing it the same as them. Like I don't use my whole thing isn't about nutrition. It's all about everything in moderation. At the end of the day, if you can't get a child engaged in food, what's the point of having nutrition involved? So that's the way I look at it. But then there's like world-renowned or English-renowned, whatever you want to call them, nutritionists, pediatricians, dietitians, whatever. But they look more at statistics than the sort of wholesome side of it. So each has got its place, but it's just how you utilize that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like you said, it's like everybody's got their own place, and it's up to, us to figure out what works specifically for our families versus just being that cookie cutter of what we see around us, and I love that. And I think a lot of times, at least from what I've observed, is it seems like, especially as a new mom, you don't have that confidence yet. I remember when I had my first, it was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, tell me what to do with this baby, like I know the fundamentals, obviously, but like, I don't understand, and you're learning so much. And I remember by the time I had my second, I was like, oh, like I actually feel okay about this, like I didn't have that worry. and now it's like I've got my fourth and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I remember in pregnancy, they're like, oh, how far along are you? I'm like, I don't remember. This is what I'm due. like, I've been through this so many times now. Who even knows? And I think a lot of times it's like, as moms, it's the more kids you have, kind of the more seasoned you are, and the more it's like you realize how okay it is to just let things be, and as a new mom, like you don't realize that. And I think another thing is the amount of responsibility of being a mom.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of responsibility. Like the decisions you make matter, right? And you're sculpting a whole nother human. And so I think sometimes that responsibility is scary. And I think that that's one of the biggest reasons why it's easy for moms to kind of follow someone else's lead, because it relinquishes a little bit of that responsibility. It becomes, if something doesn't work out, it's not, oh, I messed up. It's, oh, whatever guidance I was listening to was wrong, and I think that that's part of why a lot of moms tend to kind of end up in these cliques of ideology around motherhood, because it's easier to sit there and relinquish that responsibility to some ideology versus saying, I've sat there and done my research and I've cultivated this culture around my family, and this is how we're going to intentionally live,
Yeah, it's definitely, I think as well, like motherhood is almost like romanticized at times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that necessarily helps, because
Yeah.
reality doesn't shine through. You think, oh, I bring the baby back and we just have this amazing bond and everything just goes swimmingly. And you're like, nope.
Yeah. Yes.
So there's the rule book. There it goes.
Absolutely. And the separation too, like the romanticizing part, it's funny because you're absolutely right. Like they do romanticize, motherhood. But then I also think, like, on the other hand, there's the reality of motherhood isn't, to me at least, it's not any less romantic.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just harder, and to me, like, I look at that and say there's just so much meaning there in what you're doing. That's why it's difficult. But I think some people, if you're not able to find the meaning in what you're doing and you don't feel that connection to what you're doing, then when it's hard, it's just hard, and they think something's wrong. And it's sad, because it's like, you don't have to think like that. We can, you can overcome that, and we don't have to, like, it doesn't have to be this romantic, oh, I bonded with my baby immediately and went home and breastfeeding was perfect, and my baby never had a poop blowout. Like, that sounds great and all, but like the reality is even if they do have a poop blowout, maybe you have fun, in the bath with them, maybe, like there's other parts to that are just as important. And so I think just finding like that balance. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I mean, with as well, like the one thing I'm finding a lot with a lot of clients of mine have been coming through, there's been quite a journey with their motherhood journey so far. So there's been either some sort of traumatic event beforehand with their child, which has triggered their high levels of anxiety. But because I don't know how it is in the US, but in the UK, we have kind of like a chart, if you like. And if you're somewhere on that chart, then you look at being postnatally depressed if you're trauma, trauma, whatever. But if you've just gone through, as I phrase this very lightly, is you've just gone through some trauma, but you haven't actually gone through the depths to be diagnosed with postnatal depression or something. Then you kind of just get left to get on with it. So it's like, I had a situation with a client of mine whose little baby was literally born in 5 minutes. So all her breathing and swallowing and everything else hadn't kicked in properly, because obviously it works as you go down the birth canal. So she struggled breastfeeding with her and feeding in general, struggled with all this. And 2 days after she brought her home, she was struggling to breathe because she was choking on the breast milk. So she ended up being sent to hospital and having various tests done and whatever. And they said it's down to her lack of being able to do it because of how her muscle tone was. However, it scared her so much that when she came to the weaning journey, obviously like with any mum, but the weaning journey, it was even more heightened because she hadn't dealt with that. So she felt so guilty for like allowing that to happen, even though it's not her control. It was nothing that she did wrong.
Yeah.
But because she carries that mum guilt. And then I had another few clients which also have horrific mum guilt about that they might be on their second or third child, and they've read the books, they did everything they were supposed to do in the weaning journey before, and their child was either great until they get to like 12 months old, and then they've become really fussy, and now they don't touch anything. And now they're the fussiest child ever, which is misunderstood, because the reason you have between 12 and 18 months, generally your child is more fussy around food, is not because they're being fussy around food. It's because of the fact back in the day when we were like caveman kind of style, there's parts of our brain which basically between 12 and 18 months, generally developmentally, a child is about to walk or toddling around already or familiarize themselves with surroundings. So providing they're on that train of development, their brain kicks in to the point of, well, now I'm more aware of food, because if you go back through that sort of journey from the past, they were walking around and they were going to be picking up food by themselves because they weren't going to have that nurturing from their parent as much. So in doing so, they had to be more aware. And it's called the sorry, my voice went all funny then.
That's okay.
Neophobic stage. And it is basically a stage in time. So if you sort of don't accept it and don't make exceptions, but you just keep going with it and not seem bothered by it in a negative way, don't interact with it, then they'll sail through it and that'll be fine. But if you interact with it and you're like, oh, well, they don't like this and they don't like that and they're not eating this, and you get more anxious with it yourself because you worry about it too much, then it becomes that trigger and that window where it switches into them being a nightmare for the rest of their childhood anyway, generally. But yeah, so I've had people, like a lady I worked with the other day, and she had a little girl at 6 months, and she sat there telling me how much she hadn't done this, and she knew it was her problem, and she knew it was her issue, and she knew this and she knew that. And I was like, okay, let's just breathe a minute. Let's get rid of that guilt, because it doesn't matter. You're here now and you want to try doing it now. So let's work on how to make it you going forwards. All the rest of it is you're doing fine. Like, why you have it? But I could literally see it, because I do my client conversations through like online through videos, so or in person. So I could just see this like aura, if you like, of guilt around her, and she just looked so heavy. And I don't want any mum to feel like that, because there's enough things to feel like that about, and weaning's not one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, what are the biggest things that your clients come to you with in terms of the biggest struggles?
I think one would be the fact that they've done it one way with their first child, and now obviously it's ended up a certain different way. Not successful. They were fine during the weaning process, but now they're not. So therefore they think that it's something they've done that was wrong, first of all. And another one is where they have extreme high levels of anxiety again, through some sort of traumatic experience generally, because I don't just work on giving them, this is what you do to wean your child. I look at the whole picture and what's going on, to work out where the mum's mindset is at, because subliminally they're going to be giving those messages to their child. So it's no point me trying to get them to just follow this book for me and do these steps if I don't know where the parent is. And some are just wanting that extra bit of confidence. They're just like, oh, well, I thought about doing this, but my sister's aunt's friend said. And then they doubt themselves. So they need that bit of, no, you're doing fine. It's okay to do that. Another one is allergies. People don't know where to start with allergies. And there seems to be more and more with allergies nowadays. And such a varied amount of different types of allergies as well. I mean, cow's milk's usually one, like lactose, obviously. But soy is close second. And then you also have other ones to like wheat and egg and everything else. So they can be so varied and so impactful for the child, because as well, if they keep giving them food or trying them, and they think they're weaning journey and they feel confident at the beginning, they start giving them food, the child keeps reacting to it, they get into that cycle, then the child's then being ill afterwards. The child doesn't want to eat because it's put that connection with food and being sick
Yeah.
together. So obviously, like us, we wouldn't want to eat it. So
Yeah.
it's trying to like break that cycle. So I think I have a very different amount of clients with different needs. And it's all very individual, to be fair.
Yeah.
Another one I had was an international client in Japan. That was an interesting one between the time difference and everything else. But yeah, she was lovely, and she panicked because her daughter wasn't putting on weight as quick as the pediatricians told her that she needs to. She's only a tiny little thing. She's only a small build. I mean, her mum's only a small build anyway. But she was only a small build, and she was eating, but she wasn't eating enough. And if they tried to give her more, then she was just throwing it on the floor. So it's kind of looking then, okay, so let's try giving her more fatty contented foods to put the weight on if you want, but don't make it about the amount she's eating.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of side of it. So yeah, there's quite a variety of different clients I work with for different reasons. But like I said, they all have their place in it. But it all comes from the mum's mindset ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how it's different too, like with each child. You're kind of talking about how one of the biggest ones is like they had a successful, go at it with their first child, and then their second one's having a little bit more struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Because I feel like that's just in my experience of having four, they're all different, right? So my youngest is still like, he's like 6 months old. So he's still nursing along. But my 18-month-old, she is the one with the cow's milk allergy. And she does fine with goat's milk. So we have her on goat's milk. And we've been trying to introduce foods to her. She's 18 months and she still like does not want anything to do with anything besides a bottle and liquids. But we've been trying to give her some foods, and we tried giving her some scrambled egg, and she ended up, her whole lips swelled up. So now we've been told, put the kibosh on any foods right now. We're going to do some blood testing and basically do a whole big allergy panel. So we got to make sure, like, because obviously they don't want us introducing foods that can cause anaphylaxis and be an emergency. So that's like the next thing. I'm like, I feel like it's always something. I just want her to be able to eat okay, and eat food and be healthy, and I'm sure you probably get stuff like this all the time. It's like, these are the types of clients that, where it's like, oh, I did all this stuff with my previous kids, and now all of a sudden I'm hitting this roadblock. So when you're working with parents, how long do they typically end up working with you? Is it like one session, or do you work with them, over the course of months? Like, how does that work?
It depends on how intense they need my support, really. But I do everything from an hour where you just have like a question or something you want to get off your chest, or you want some reassurance or something like that. So I'll do an hour just troubleshooting something with you. Tell me the question before I call you, because then obviously I have more time to work it out. But otherwise, I tend to work people over a 4-week basis, because then I give them little interactive activities to do for themselves, which help them, again, put themselves into the child's mindset. So, I mean, simple things like, I say simple things, not everybody thinks of it like this. I have to keep reminding myself of that. But like how a child sees food, you'll know this as you have 4, but they think that putting food in front of them, a child at 6 months, they're just going to want to pick it up and just want to eat it instantly. No. They are going to want to faff around with it and play around with it, but if they're interested at all. However, it's like I get some of my clients to put blindfolds on and to pick up something that would be a food item of some description, and feel it and smell it and touch it, and before tasting it generally. And then they have to guess what it is, because obviously taking away the sight is equivalent to you putting your child in the high chair or wherever you're feeding them and giving them food for the first time, because they don't know what to expect. So it's kind of like those kind of interactive things I get them to do, which are things that us as adults wouldn't do naturally, because we'd know if we were going to go and eat a tomato or an avocado or a piece of bread, we knew what we were going to expect from it, unless it tastes wrong, and then obviously you don't eat it. But with regards to like introducing new things to children, that's how they see it. It's new and exciting but it's only new and exciting to you because they don't know what it is yet, and they don't know
Yeah.
what it's going to taste or feel or smell or anything else. And it's also introducing flavor as well. So when I work with people like that, I do that over, say, 4 weeks. So we introduce different things. And in that, I do like edible messy play sessions with them and give them recipes and things like that. And then also talk them through their own mindset, their own concerns. If it's allergies and things like that, depending on how vast their allergies are covering, I can generally sort of put together like some explorative things and some ways of introducing food that isn't just explorative, because obviously when a child's resistant to food, the best way is to go back to the explorative stage. So you play with it. For example, oats is a good one to play with, and things like we have is like Oatabix and things like that, like Weetabix cereals and whatnot. So they look like you can build with them. They look like bricks, but they're things to play with. But it's, if they put it in their mouth, it's a bonus. If they don't, it's not a big deal. It's getting them used to it. So then they'll want it at some point, because naturally a child between these ages wants to put something in their mouth because they want to find out what it is. So I do that for 4 weeks. But if the allergies are very vast and I have to wait for time slots on different things, then obviously I go for longer. It depends on the parent and the child, to be fair. But I haven't usually needed to work with parent longer than, I think the longest about 3 months. The quickest is about an hour, and I've had people do an hour and they've come to me and gone, oh yes, well, he's not doing this, and I've gone, right, well, have you done this, this and this? And they're like, oh no, I could do. And like, well, why not then? And then they're like, oh, he's eating fine now. I'm glad.
That's awesome.
It's like, I love the fact as well, like I ask all the people I work with to send me pictures, keep me in the loop, and I always go back and message them, and I'm like, oh, how's it going? You know, and it's not up sales or anything part. It's generally because I'm invested in your journey, because I want it to be good to you. I'm not there just to give you this information and go, right, well, you pay me the money and I've done 4 weeks now, see ya. It's not the kind of thing I do. I'm genuinely invested in that. So I touch base with all my clients on a regular basis just to see how they are, and it's great to see them growing as in their motherhood journeys, or even fatherhood journeys sometimes, but their parenting journeys, there we go, parenting journey, and also their child growing, and you get to see all the cute pictures as well. So
love that. And then so you have 4 children, so what's the age ranges of them right now?
18, 16 going on 17, 15 going on 16, and 9.
And 9. Oh my goodness. So how long have you been doing what you're doing?
I specialized in weaning for about 4 years now, but I lost all my social media because of the fact that my Facebook got hacked. So all my business and my personal stuff got lost, and I had literally lost everything overnight.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
So yes, I didn't like social media in the first place. I definitely don't like it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
But so I'm kind of starting from scratch with everything. Unfortunately, I lost a lot of contacts, like business contacts and things that I would have loved to work with, but it's the people that you don't work with regularly but you keep in touch with like yearly or something, and they're the kind of people that I've lost. So hopefully they'll find me at some point.
And then what's it been like, doing this work while also having children at home? Kind of what does the day-to-day look like, things like that?
My day-to-day anyway is making sense out of chaos 90% of the time. So I chose to homeschool my children because my middle two didn't get on with school, and their mental health declined for it. And my eldest got ill as well from school. So so I homeschooled, and he's now at college. My eldest studying animation, and I do a child-led approach. So it's very much, again, going for the child's perspective. So I follow their lead in everything. I don't have to do it how everybody had to do over COVID or anything like that. God, my life would not be worth living at that point. and that was just too stressful for me. But I do it on the set that I follow their interests, and I encourage them to do various different things. Like my youngest is all about horses and design, and she wants to design wedding dresses. I have no idea why, but she does. And my 15-year-old, 16-year-old, she wants to go into childcare, which she's had experience with me as well, so she knows what she's doing. And then my 16-year-old, he's probably going to be an entrepreneur himself because he likes things in nutrition and fitness and that kind of thing, but he doesn't like the typical 9-to-5 side of it. So they all have very different personalities, but I've kind of followed their way of doing it rather than sit down and do this book, sit down and do this for this bit. No, that just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. So, yeah, we do homeschooling too, and we do a pretty child-led approach. I have curriculums for like the basics, like math, reading, writing, that type of thing. But I don't ever push it. It's like, which one do you want to work on today? Let's sit down and work on it together, and that type of thing.
Yeah, I think you find out so much more about your child as well. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a big shock to the system when you started off thinking that your kids are going to go to school and you're going to get these 8 hours a day, and they're not going to school, and it's not those 8 hours a day, and you are literally around your child 24 hours a day. It is a little bit of a shock to the system. I'll go through it with that part, but I think you actually find out more about your child on a very different level than being with them. So they know when I'm working, so I separate myself to that, and they go and do whatever they choose to do right then and there, as long as it's safe and age appropriate. But my others go to college, so they're in education at the moment, studying obviously what they want to do. But my youngest, obviously, I only really work certain days, so I fit it around whatever I want to do, and then make sure I've got the time to take her to the stables, go riding, or do whatever else we need to do. That is just fun.
Yeah.
How about you? How do you find fitting in work and homeschooling and things, especially if yours are so young as well?
Yeah, mine are very young, so it's a little bit different. And I do about 2 to 4 hours a day of work, and I stretch that out. So I do about 2-hour increments of time generally. Anytime that I do a call, like we're filming this right now on a weekend, so I do all my filming stuff on weekends or in the evenings when my husband's home. That way he can watch the kids and I can do this uninterrupted. But during the day, like I do all, my social media outreach, my content creation, I do all my work, like the back end work, all the more administrative tasks that aren't directly with people. I do all of that stuff during the day. So I do about 2-hour increments. So like we get up, we do our morning routine. We only do about an hour of actual like sit down homeschooling. And then, but I don't know, I consider everything educational. So
it is.
We do it. Yeah, we do an hour of homeschooling, but they're learning all day long. So, but we get up, we do everybody's morning routine, all the personal hygiene, do the bottles, get the babies taken care of, do breakfast with the older two. Then we clean up breakfast. We do an hour of homeschooling, and then after that, I basically set them up with toys. So my 18-month-old, she's crawling now, so she likes to crawl around a little bit. My 2 older ones just play in like the dollhouse, or they'll play with their toys. And then my 17-month-old, I'll either have her crawling around, or I'll put her like in one of those jumpers so she's more contained. Especially if she's being a little too adventurous that day, I'll kind of, contain her a bit so I can work and not have to constantly be stopping her from getting into things. So it depends on the day. And then my youngest is 6 months. So I actually usually work in the same room as them. So I'll just kind of work there, and that way I can oversee them, break up fights if I have to or whatever. But they keep to themselves. They're pretty independent children. So so we'll do that. And then I just have my 6-month-old kind of, usually he'll hang out in the swing, or he'll be, on the couch next to me or something. And, he's always nearby. And then I do my 2-hour stretch. And then after that, we, have lunch, take a break, do some exercise, house chores with the kids, that type of thing. And then I do another 2-hour stretch, and then we clean everything up. And then that's when I kind of put on like a movie. They all sit down and watch a movie while I make dinner, because at that point I need them to not touch me. Don't touch anything. We've just cleaned up, So they watch a movie. I make some dinner, and then my husband gets home, we eat, and then he's on kid duty. So all the kids get passed off to him. I'll nurse if I need to, change diapers if I need to, but he's good about changing diapers. But we have two that are constantly in diapers, and then my 3-year-old is overnight. So, sometimes we both got to handle it at the same time, but but he's good about it. And then in the evenings he'll be home, so he takes them. And then if I have to hop on calls, I'll do calls with clients or record my podcast shows. If I have to, or just like film YouTube videos, that type of thing. So yeah.
No,
But
it sounds great. It sounds
so
really
many different
cool.
variations of how to make it work,
Mm.
Yeah.
I think you do, but it goes back to doing what works for you at the end of the day and your dynamic, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, I love the entrepreneur lifestyle with having children. I wouldn't be able to homeschool, right, if I had to be at a job. And even then, I talk to a lot of my mom friends who do work in a job, and I can't tell you how many of them, their resumes are crazy because they're having to hop from job to job because they get fired because their kid just had adenovirus for a week and they were out of work all week, or their kids having issues in school and now daycare won't take them anymore because they're, not potty trained properly, or, whatever. There's, or like where we live, a lot of the daycares have wait lists. So that's a big issue too, where a lot of times it's just literally they can't find childcare, or the childcare is not affordable. So that's another one where if the childcare costs, $8 an hour, you have to make a pretty decent amount. And then minus the taxes at that point, it's like, okay, I'm only making a couple $100 a week. Is it worth me not being, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's so many different components there. And so I love that I'm able to make my own schedule, work my systems around. I work with other moms specifically. So I'm a business coach that helps mompreneurs. And so it's also nice because like they understand the unique struggle. So the time zones that they can meet is generally the same time I can meet. It's like we're getting together in the evening or on the weekends, which is usually best for everybody, so they can have their husbands watch their kids, my husband's watching mine, and we can work. So yeah, it's pretty interesting how the whole thing works. And just everybody finds their own groove, whatever works for them. And watching the kids like really embrace it too. I've noticed. So my oldest, she always wants to learn and explore new things. And she loves the idea of just being able to like make money, And so she's always joking with me because my husband goes to work every day. She's like, why can't he just work on the computer at home with us too? I'm like, you don't understand. Not everyone can do it like that. You have to make those opportunities, but soon enough, we're working on retiring him so he can join the business with me, but
oh, amazing.
Yeah. but I love that, just being able to be at home with your kids and making it work. And that's why I love like doing this show, and just you get to learn so much about so many different fields, but also just connecting as a one mom business owner to another, and just being able to like show other moms that it is possible to live that lifestyle. It is possible to do all of it in a way that makes sense for your family. It's possible to make money working at home, homeschooling your kids and raising them, and not having to deal with all that extra stress, So
yeah, I definitely found it more stressful with my kids going to school than I did when I was homeschooling.
Yeah. And so if you had, we'll start wrapping this up now, but if you were talking to a mom who's starting her journey of building a business and she's got these kids at home, what's the piece of advice? What's that little tidbit of success that you've learned about that you would want to share?
I would, if I'm going to be truthful, I would say that plan out things for times that you want to do it, but don't beat yourself up about it if you don't get those chances because something crops up. Enjoy and embrace that moment that you have to do whatever you have to do for your mum duty. Because what I've done in the past is I've gone, oh, I needed to do this and I planned to do this, but now I've got to look after my poorly child, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
frustrating, because I feel then I'm letting my business down. I'm not being there for that, or I'm not doing this for the client, or I'm not doing this. But no, it's because my daughter needs me or my son needs me, and that is like my be all and end all at the end of the day. So that's my most important thing. That's why I do what I do. So if that's the case, then why am I beating myself up about it? So it took me a long while to do that, but I just kind of give myself a bit of grace and just experience the gratefulness for that opportunity rather than negative.
Yeah, I love that. So we'll go ahead and put the links in the description to this video. But if people are trying to find you on social media or things like that, where can they find you? What's the handle for them to look for?
It would just be intuitive weaning.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I've learned so much from you already. I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.